the Russian military was in such a terrible state, as anyone who's traveled with them as I have, knows, you know, incredibly tired equipment on the, you know, just this side of collapsing entirely. Helicopters, you know, held together with masking tape and et cetera. You know, old equipment, metallurgy from the 1950s in terms of aircraft engines, et cetera, et cetera. You know, Russia's rich enough, if it wants to create a proper professional army. And obviously all kinds of announcements are being made. We're speaking on the 30th of March, and I think this week the defense minister's office in Moscow announced that there'd be 5 new pursuit submarines capable of launching proper missiles built in the next few years. If they carry through on this, if they demobilize this extremely inefficient conscript army and replace it with a proper volunteer professional army, they certainly have the means to do so, but so far I don't think it's very clear. Stationing a few bombers in Havana or in Caracas isn't going to change anything. And the Americans are not. The American Defense Department under this Secretary of Defense, under Robert Gates, are not so stupid as to use this to panic over this. These people are Gates, General Jones, the National Security Advisors, Admiral Mullen, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. These are very sophisticated people. They understand that a couple of Tupolevs in Venezuela can be shot down easily enough by U.S. anti-aircraft forces. I don't think that's the problem. I think the question is whether the Russians intend, A, to create out of the ruins of this post-Soviet army a proper army, and two, a proper military, excuse me, and two, whether what they did in Abkhazia and South Ossetia is part of a more general plan to recreate a zone of interest and influence, or whether these were just specific actions having to do with the very particular state of relations and view toward Georgia. That I don't have a sense of. Oh, I think the situation is really terrible, and I think the Obama administration is late, although I think it's very much to their credit that they've realized they were late, and as a result, Secretary of State Clinton and the Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano and various senior figures of the military are now down there a lot. No, this is the gravest threat to a Latin American state since the attempt by the Colombian drug cartels 15 years ago to do a similar thing, which was in effect to create a free zone for themselves that the state would understand could not be challenged. That failed in Colombia, but only barely. And it really only failed definitively when President Uribe came into power, and most Colombians I know would argue it failed because everything else was tried. That is, say, the Pastrana government in Bogota tried to negotiate both with the narco traffickers quietly and with the FARC guerrillas publicly. And that didn't work, and in the end there was a war, and the Colombian state beat back this fundamental challenge to its authority. Not perfectly, not. The FARC still controls vast swatches of Colombia and may very well continue to do so for the foreseeable future, but at least the high water mark seems to have been reached, and the tide is going out again. I think Mexico is very much in that situation. I think in some of the border cities, as well as in a few of the resort cities, there is an effort to, again, create this kind of free zone. And whether the Calderon government is strong enough to beat it back is the great question. I mean, in many ways, Mexico, what happens in Mexico is at least as important, and in my view, more important than what happens in Pakistan.